Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Multispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour to be a part of the program. It is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalai. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you this hour as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off. Over the past few weeks, we've been talking about data privacy, data security, and best practices for owning local data. And one of the things that I have had to deal with is the fact that I can own data all day long. But at the end of the day, anytime I leave my house, all of a sudden I've left my trusted infrastructure, and thus this creates a problem because I no longer have any place to store my local data. So there are a couple of choices. Right? Obviously, there are those of us that choose to host our own services. And so you could set up a C-File instance, you could set up a Nextcloud instance, you could set up a own cloud instance. And I have done all of those things with varying degrees of success. Obviously, my favorite being C-File. I use it exclusively as a Dropbox replacement, but there is a problem. For extremely sensitive files, or not even extremely sensitive files, but just personal things, I am uncomfortable with those files syncing around the internet. And I don't care if it is if there is all this encryption. I don't care if there's SSL. I just don't like the idea of something that I never want to be on the internet syncing around on the internet. And I finally found a solution. As always, though, your calls go to the front of the line. Joey calls from Virginia. Hey, Joey, welcome to the Ask Noah show.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good.
I'm trying to find out, have you ever used basically a kiosk, like a self-serve kiosk, like a point-of-sale terminal, but, just for somebody to, buy a ticket for an event, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Any recommendations on software?
Oh, I see. For setting one up, for hosting one.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Like the equivalent of WooCommerce, but it's intended for the customer to use.
Well, I tell you what, I this is a little self-serving, but and it is what it is, right? It's the best answer to the question. I guess it doesn't matter if it's self-serving. Our software, it's open source, and essentially what it is the XFCE desktop on top of a stock Ubuntu install. And we have a repository that you can add. I'll have links in the show notes. It's called the Altispeed Kiosk. And what the repository does a couple of things. First of all, it provides make sure that certain packages are installed. So you're going to have access to the various web browsers and the Office suite and stuff like that. But the other thing it does some security things. So it automatically removes any of the user configuration. So if somebody clicks, tries to save a password, or if somebody tries to screw up Firefox, or if somebody tries to import their own, bookmarks or change the wallpaper, any of the stuff that people do on public machines gets blown away every time the machine is restarted. And so we maintain it, and what we've done is we have deployed these for hotels and for conference centers, for internet kiosks when people check in, or when we've done them in airports where people have to print out their boarding pass and so on and so forth. And so it's based on Linux, obviously runs on Ubuntu. It's nothing particularly special, but it does lock down a lot of the features and restricts those to only the one who holds the root password. And obviously then the guest kiosk user is able to do all of the daily functional things, but has no administrative control whatsoever in the computer. In fact, everything they do is not persistent. It exists inside of a RAM disk and is just forgotten. It goes poof every time the machine reboots.
Okay. Does it work with a specific payment processor?
If you want, so the way it's designed, right, is you can set it up for any number of things. So we've done everything from here's a kiosk that people just want to browse the internet and open documents and check email, all the way to here is a disclaimer that it was a pool disclaimer, so they had to fill out the pool disclaimer. They had to accept the terms of service, and then the page would refresh. And you can customize it to display whatever it is you want. So for example, if you wanted to collect a payment, I would suggest you tie it in with something like Stripe. And so Stripe would be the back-end payment processor. You'd write a simple little PHP front end that basically says enter your credit card information, enter the name, enter the password, this, that, and the other, and then it would talk to Stripe. Stripe would do all of the processing. Obviously, we want to hand off all of the processing and security and PCI compliance, and as much of that as possible, we want to hand off to people that spend their day focusing on security. All we have to worry about doing is implementing a proper HTTPS solution to send that payment over to Stripe through their API key. And once you have that, you'd be able to process payments with it, no problem.
Okay, now would it work with a card reader?
Yes. The way that magnetic card readers work is so both 1-channel and 2-channel credit cards or magnetic stripes will input data as it will appear to Linux as a HID keyboard device. So it is essentially like plugging in a number pad and having a robot type the magnetic numbers. Where you're going to run into problems is if you want to start processing chip cards. If you want chip and pin, that gets a little more complicated because the way that the specification for the chip and pin appliance is, it has to talk directly to the payment processor. Now, that's both good news and bad news. The good news about that is typically if you buy like a credit card reader from Ingenico, which is a typical manufacturer of a card reader that's going to support the chip card, their API inside of that card reader is going to directly talk to the payment processor, so the computer then becomes irrelevant. The bad news about that is unless you have experience tying Ingenico equipment into a given, if, like, let's say you want a page and they have to fill out their name and address and they have to select which product they want and all of that, and then they click pay, and then it does a handoff to the credit card reader. If you want that stuff to work, you're going to have to hire a developer to write some of those things. Now, we have implemented some of those solutions, and if we were writing how do I phrase this? If we have implemented those solutions, and if it was our idea or we were funding the project, all of that code would be available on our GitLab, and I would just point you to it and say, here you go. Unfortunately, we were doing it for a client. They own the rights to that software because they paid us to develop it for them. What I can tell you is that it was a lot of work and it was a lot of money to write a system that was capable of working with the chip and pin. And so what a lot of smaller merchants are doing is going to something like a Square reader or something like that, where it's just a contained unit and goes into a built-in commodity tablet, and that's your cheapest, straightforward way to getting a payment processor. But if you can deal without chip and pin, if you can deal with people either entering their credit card manually or swiping it, then you can absolutely use Stripe, and we do. Okay.
You got time for one more?
I sure do. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so basically the kiosk, this is picture, it's, like a Halloween haunted house thing where people go up and buy their tickets. So say people are going to go through in batches, 10 people at a time. Do you know of any ticketing software that can do that? That can manage the groups, that can say like, hey, groups 10 through 20, it's your turn.
I don't, but to be honest with you, that kind of thing sounds like it would be fairly trivial to put together, right? Essentially, what you're doing is every time somebody submits a registration, that goes into like an SQLite database or a MariaDB database, and after so many counts, then that group is filled, and you move on to the other. Maybe you statically define, whatever a number of groups that you couldn't overfill, like maybe 50 groups, right? And then each time you hit 10 or however many people you want in that group, it dumps out and says, okay, now this one is ready to go, and then maybe even spits out a time that says, here is the time when your group is going to depart. Now, every developer that's listening to the show is going to laugh at me because maybe that's a terrible way to do it. I don't know. I pay developers to do those kinds of things for me. But what I can tell you, having done a number of projects, is that doesn't sound like that would be very complicated. Again, chip and pin is going to be a far more complicated problem to solve. The actual registration or the actual group ticketing thing, that would be fairly open. What I would do if I woke up in your shoes, I think what I would do, Joey, is I would reach out to Linux Fest Northwest, I would reach out to Southeast Linux Fest, and I would reach out to Scale, because they have registration systems that do specifically that. Now, it doesn't necessarily group people together, But to a certain degree it does, because depending on what organization they're from, it will print that out on the badge. And I bet you dollars to donuts the code for at least one of those three, if not all three systems, is open source, and you could just take it whole hog and use it.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at was room management systems, because it's kind of the same workflow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
awesome.
That's kind of what I figured. I just didn't want to reinvent the wheel if there was already something that did it. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the call. 855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. The email live at AskNoahShow.com. Oh, man, we got full phones this hour. Good afternoon. You're on the air.
Hi, Noah. This is Casey. I was just wondering, is there any benefit for having Nextcloud on, let's say, a DigitalOcean droplet versus having it hosted at home and then using WireGuard to transfer to the VPN?
Mm-hmm.
Is it any more secure, or just even more of a headache to do it the other way?
It's both. So on the pro side, anytime you're in DigitalOcean, keep in mind, DigitalOcean is responsible for the maintenance of the hardware, and they have protocols in place to swap hardware after it's been in production for so long. They're swapping the hard drives or the SSDs after they've been in production for so long. When a hardware fails, they have live migration services that will move it over to a new virtual host. You get an email, they say, hey, something went down, we moved it over, your server's back up and running. So there's a lot less headache on your end. You don't have to worry about the uptime, you just have to worry about keeping your credit card up to date. DigitalOcean takes care of the rest, right? You can take advantage of things like snapshotting, you can take advantage of their backup service, you can take advantage of moving images from one server to the other, replicating a given server from one data center to the other. All of those features come at a cost premium because you're paying per month, but you do get value for that money, and it's why we choose to host a lot of our services on DigitalOcean. Now, the downside to that, as you correctly pointed out, you're right. You are sharing a physical device with other people, and so depending on how private or not private your data is, obviously other people may find their way into it. Now, it's not likely, and obviously a properly patched server should not, those sort of vulnerabilities won't exist. It shouldn't exist. But we have seen things like Heartbleed, right, where people where there are exploits to get access to memory, and so as we continue to venture into virtual hosting and hypervisors and things like that, we're learning about some of the massive security ramifications. Intel, it seems like every few months has a new one that pops up. So yeah, I would say you do take a hit, in my book anyway, from the security standpoint, anytime you're sharing a resource with somebody else. So in my opinion, the most secure way is a air-gapped server. So it does not connected to a network at all. If it is connected to a network, it's its own closed network with no connection to the internet whatsoever. Second from that would be a server that sits inside of your home. It's maybe on your network that has a connection to the internet, but there are no ports that are forwarded. It exists inside your LAN. After that, from a security standpoint, I would tell you that anytime you have a VPN connection in, so there's only one way into the network, granted whatever vulnerabilities exist with that VPN solution you're going to be subjected to, but you only have to worry about securing one entrance path. Everything else sits nicely behind a firewall and is as long as you keep your router up to date, most of the time secure. And then after that would be opening the server up to the internet directly, passing ports directly through your firewall, which a lot of people do with Nextcloud, and it's designed to be done that way, and there's nothing wrong with doing it that way, but it is less secure than having it completely secured behind your firewall. And then finally would be opening it up to the public internet, giving your server a public IP address right on the wire and opening it up to the world. And that's what you would get if you were to do a DigitalOcean server.
That sounds good. Yeah, mostly on my Nextcloud instance, I usually keep just my calendars, and I usually use it for syncing photos, and then usually from home it gets synced over from Nextcloud over to a home drive and then removed immediately. But I just wanted to see if it was just better to keep it all in house, or just for the minimal headache, keep it on a droplet for a little bit and then go from there.
I've done it both ways. Anything that I would be upset if it got leaked to the internet, it just simply won't go onto a computer that isn't in front of a firewall. Hands down, no exceptions. Anything like pictures of my kids that I would prefer not to get onto the internet, but at the end, it's not going to kill anybody. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's just, it's a mild preference. Those kinds of things are the things that I have no problem syncing over C-File and having that live on the internet or Nextcloud or OwnCloud.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the call. 855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Good afternoon. You're on the air. That's you. 8585. Going once. Going twice. Thanks for the call. Give us a call back. 855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. So going along with data privacy, again, this is going to be a cool episode. If we get through half of this, I'll be excited. I set out to solve a problem, and here was my problem. My problem was data on the go, data on the fly. I wanted a device that I could trust that supported encryption and I could trust was going to be private and secure, and primarily I wanted to use it offline. And so I tried a number of different approaches, right? First, I started looking at just digital notepads. Is there some sort of digital notepad, some way that I could just write things down, brainstorm, collect thoughts, and I don't have to worry about the security of said notes? It could be client information, it could be personal information, it could be any sort of information that I really don't want on the internet. Could I do that with a digital notebook? Come to find out, no, not really. All of the digital notebooks are really designed to sync to Android, and they're pretty terrible. Again, 855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. You're on Ask Noah. Good afternoon. Do we have you now? Might be having some phone issues. I'm sorry to keep doing this to you, but I guess maybe try from a different phone. We can't hear you. So I started to look for a device that I could trust, and I came across, obviously I played with Ubuntu Phone, obviously I played with Lineage OS, I tried a bunch of different devices. Those are primarily designed to replace Android. They're primarily designed to be a open source-ish replacement for Android. And a lot of them, to be useful, you end up having to pull back in Google services and or install an alternative to Google services that, it keeps the device up to date, but at the end of the day, it's really designed to be another smartphone, something that's connected to the internet 24/7. That's really not what I was looking for. And then I came across Yalla and SailfishOS. And the first thing that stood out to me was the fact that there's such a important stress on Linux. And the fact that all of the people that seemed to use it cared and respected Linux and wanted to participate in the Linux ecosystem. Now, I want to stop here and just clarify something. You have to decide. You have to decide when you go to pick out a smartphone what path you're going to take. And right now, I think there's a very firm Y in the road. There's a very firm fork, and there are only one of two paths to go down. And I firmly believe this. The first path is that of popularity. An internet-connected device running a mainstream platform or just short of a mainstream platform like Lineage, which runs all the native APKs, and you participate in the smartphone world. You download the app that they tell you to app. You give it the permissions that they tell you to give it. You connect it to the internet when they tell you to connect it to the internet. You sync where they tell you to sync. But everything is running on the internet. You have to choose if you want to go down that road. Your alternative is you go down a different road. And the different road is you start treating the smartphone, you start treating a small portable computer for what it is, a small portable computer. And you start treating it like a laptop that's 7 inches long and fits inside of your pocket. And I made a choice this week, and my choice was to start treating a smartphone like a mini laptop. And it turns out there's an operating system for that, and that operating system, you guessed it, is SailfishOS. All right, let's try this one more time. It's 855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. Do we have you? Hello? I'm sorry, man. We still can't hear you. I am so sorry. I feel so bad. You're trying so hard. He called 3 different times, but we have no audio from him. So I started to research what I was going to do with SailfishOS, and I came across the Sony open devices. Now, you can find more developer.sony.com/develop/open-devices. We'll have a link for you in the show notes. Now, the Sony Open Devices project is an open source project designed to produce devices with configurations that are available on GitHub. That means that the software is going to be available open to you as a developer, and you can use and contribute to it. It's also a way for Sony to support the Android community, and they provide all of the tools necessary for contributing to AOSP, or Android Open Source Project. This is massive, and I can't believe I have not come across this before. Sony makes an entire line of mobile phones specifically designed to load alternative ROMs on it. Why isn't anybody talking about this? It's such a cool thing. So I started to say to myself, there's no way this can be as great as they're making it out to be, right? It's probably going to be some handicapped, crappy hardware that's going to run, you remember, everybody that's ever experimented with inexpensive Android phones has come across at one point in their life or other a blue phone, BLU, right? They're the cheapest, most piece of junk phone in the world. They're only Android because of the way that it boots up. Everything after that is almost unusable, right? Maybe you can get it to run Telegram. The vast majority of them are junk. And there's some higher end blue phones that work okay, but for the most part, it's a budget crappy phone, okay? The Sony Xperia line is anything but a budget phone. It is absolutely an awesome phone. And I picked up on eBay for about $180 the Sony Xperia XA2 Ultra. Now, the Sony Xperia XA2 Ultra has a 6-inch screen. It features a 1080 by 1920p display, which is great because I have bad eyes, so that really sharp display is awesome. The Snapdragon 630 processor, 4 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigs of onboard storage, but it also supports up to a 256 gigabyte SD card. They go to removable memory, and that right there is so great because I can load basically a mini hard drive into what I'm calling my 7-inch laptop. And of course, it has Type-C charging, so that means that it works with all of my Type-C accessories. Noah's in heaven, okay? The first thing I noticed with this device after I got SailfishOS loaded on it, the battery life is insane. Insane. I have played with Lineage OS. I thought that was good. Let me give you an example. I unplugged at 7 a.m. this morning when I left for work, and it is now 6:25 local time. My battery, 93%. I've lost 7% the entire day, and that's not the phone is off sitting over in a corner. I was using it as a music player. I'm using it as a task list all day. I prepped my entire show on it. This is awesome. I mean, it is unbelievable the amount of battery life that I'm getting off of this device. So I set about the path of obtaining a phone and obtaining SailfishOS. And the first thing that you have to know if you're going to go down this road is that they don't officially support the US market. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't perfectly use it within the US market. It works just fine, but it does mean you got to jump through a couple of hoops. What do I mean by hoops? First of all, SailfishOS is not technically free. It's open source, so I'm sure there's a way to go about the process of getting the source code, and then you could recompile it yourself and all that. But if you just want the easy way, you spend $50 and you purchase a license. The problem is if you go to yalla.com and shop.yalla.com and try to purchase a Sailfish license, you'll get a message. Hey, we see that you're in the United States. We don't sell to people in the United States. Sorry. So the way around that is to go over to AskNoahShow.com, scroll to the very bottom of the page, and use our affiliate link to sign up for a service called Private Internet Access. If you sign up for that, they'll give you an EU exit point, and you're able to purchase the SailfishOS for like $50 or something like that. Now, the Private Internet Access, just a side rant, awesome service. One of the only companies out there that has a proven track history of going to court and saying, listen, we don't keep logs. Well, we need logs. I'm sorry, we don't keep logs. Well, could we just look? Absolutely, go look, but we don't keep logs. And they've time and time again have gone to court and have been able to defend the fact that they don't keep logs. So you should have private internet access anyway because it's a great deal. It just costs a couple bucks. It's like the cost of a pizza. And for that, you can protect your privacy. So if you need or are interested in a VPN, that's a great solution on its own. It allowed me to purchase SailfishOS. So the first thing I noticed, the install instructions from Yalla, absolutely insane. When I tried to install a couple of various different ROMs on previous Android devices, it would say generic things like, unlock your bootloader and reboot into ADB and then issue the necessary commands to blah, 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 right? Not with Sailfish. They give you a PDF and it is literally monkey see, monkey do. My 70-year-old mother could have done this, right? Plug the phone into the cable. Hold the volume button up until the blue light starts flashing. Wait a couple of minutes and type this into your Linux terminal. And it like step by step. It's one of the only how-tos I've ever seen produced by a company that I could follow exactly what they said to do. And before I knew it, I just looked down and all of a sudden SailfishOS is booting. I mean, it was so smooth and so easy. I can't even begin to describe compared to all of the other things I've had trouble with trying to sideload ROMs and sideload operating systems and all this stuff. Now, part of that is the Sony Xperia XA2 open device, right? Because you go to Sony's website, you put in the MEIE or IMEI number, it spits out an unlock code. You type that unlock code in. It says, hey, if you do this, you're going to void your warranty. You click I don't care. And it's all right. Now everything is unlocked and you have full access to the device. And Sony provides all of the software, all of the files, everything you need is provided by Sony, which is great. Hands down, fantastic job, Sony, for making this device. And hands down to Yalla for the fantastic, easy to follow, super simple instructions. They have a list of devices, so you can go. I bought mine off of eBay. It was about $180. I think new they're about $350. I heard there's a rumor on the SailfishOS forums, which we'll get to in a minute. There's a rumor on the forums that the XA10, which has just been released and it's available, you can go into Best Buy and purchase it. That's going to become a supported device very, very soon. In fact, it's unofficially, it is supported. Like you can get the ROMs and install it yourself, but officially it hasn't become supported yet. And I don't have enough good things to say about Sony for doing this because it fundamentally makes stuff like this possible. I mean, I'm tempted to go buy all of my stuff from Sony open devices now just because of this. 855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. You're on Ask Noah. Good afternoon. Oops, that's my bad. I got to click them on. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Was wondering if you have a trunking provider for a SIP system as well as a suggestion for a SIP server that would not only handle phone calls, but also SMS and MMS.
Well, there is a SMS plugin for FreePBX. I've not used it, but it exists.
Yeah, because I've looked at FreePBX. 3CX seems to support it, but they're out because once I set up the server, I'm planning on rebuilding it daily from a script.
Oh, okay.
So I can't go through the authorization over and over for 3CX. And I did find one provider that does SMS and MMS as well as the VoIP trunking. But my issue is I'm having trouble finding a server, a PBX that will handle all of that. I would like it to be sort of a one-to-one drop-in on the phone.
Sure.
But are you aware of anything like that beyond 3CX?
So here's the thing. I have this passionate hate for SMS. Like I can't even begin to explain because it's such an outdated technology, and I get that the rest of the world uses it. So I understand I'm the odd man out. I'll tell you what I would do if I woke up in your shoes. I would give a company called Vox Telesis a call. I'll have a link for them in in the show notes. They have an entire write-up on how business can use SMS to effectively communicate with their customers. And one of the things and one of the reasons that we choose to work with Vox Telesis exclusively is because they are true open source stewards. Everything they use runs on open source software. Everything they use runs on Linux. Okay. And so they are going to be the ones that have set this up for other people. And I can tell you what I've seen, but I don't feel like that's really taking your question with the level of seriousness that you probably need to be able to make an effective decision for your business. And the folks at Vox Telesis are going to be able to do that for you because they deal with this day in and day out. So I'll have a link to their rundown on effective SMS management and the SMS solutions that they provide. They have a special deal worked out, so you can go to voxtelesis.com /asknoah. And what they're going to do is they're going to give you they're going to waive they're going to give you a $25 credit towards any one of their plans. They're also going to waive any of the setup fees, so you can basically try them for a couple of months and see if it works out. If it doesn't work out, you can go somewhere else. If it does work out, you can thank them for supporting the Ask Noah show.
Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah, you and I both. I hate SMS and MMS as well. The problem is that I gotta support it.
I know.
That's what everybody else uses.
I know.
It's like email. It's the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, I tell you what, we had a meeting this morning with my production staff, and one of the things that we're very much considering doing, much to my chagrin, is we're very close to rolling out SMS for Ask Noah. So you'd be able to text into the line and ask questions that way. And I hate it with every fiber of my being, but like you say, there are so many people that find it convenient and an easy way to interact. And if you want to communicate with customers, and in my case, listeners, you have to do it. And so we got to play that game.
Yeah. And that's exactly the problem I'm running into, is I got to have something that supports the SMS and the MMS, and I can't find something where I can spin the server up and pay a trunking provider, and it's a suggestion for your previous caller had been asking about hosting either on-prem or in the cloud.
Yes.
One of the things you might think about doing is there's sort of a hybrid option I didn't hear you mention, is he could set up his Nextcloud instance in the cloud and then use DigitalOcean's private networking to then network to a separate server, which is his WireGuard endpoint.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Then take it off the internet, but it would give him the uptime of DigitalOcean, not having to rely on his own hardware. He'd still get all the benefits of the cloud without truly quite being on the cloud.
Yeah, I agree with that 99%. The only thing I would say is you're still on a shared piece of metal, right? And a shared piece of metal is still not as secure as having your own piece of metal. But you're right. It's a heck of a lot better than just being open and exposed to the internet.
Yeah, and the other thing it does is not being open and exposed to the internet, it cuts out some of the mass spamming of just port scans and everything else. So that, would be a help from just a bandwidth perspective. The other thing you could look at, too, is putting one of DigitalOcean's firewalls in front of it, on top of a firewall on his actual server.
Oh, okay.
That'd be another solution.
See, this I got to dig more into some of the features of DigitalOcean. I didn't even know they had firewalls.
Yeah, they've got. They actually have floating IPs. They pretty much, as far as I can tell, they pretty much are one-to-one with Amazon. I think the only thing they don't have, off the top of my head, would be a Kubernetes offering. But I wouldn't be surprised if they roll that out before too long.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the call.
Yeah, I had one other question for you as well. As far as, because I'm kind of in the same boat with him, I've ran my own stuff on-prem for a long time. I've always set it up where I VPN into my network. I'm going to be setting up some servers for an organization, and it's an organization I volunteer with, actually. And are there any common gotchas? Beyond making sure you've got the firewall in place, make sure you got something like fail to ban, are there any other common things that somebody may not think about when setting something up directly on the internet?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. The short answer is yes. The long answer is absolutely. So what I would tell you is this: the first thing you want to do is you want to identify all of the entrance points to your network, right? So if you're going to have, a lot of people, they're lazy, and so what they do is they just end up punching holes in the firewall, and port 22 goes over to that server, and port 6551 goes over to that server, and 8080 goes over to this server, and it's just the whole firewall is riddled with holes that penetrate right through your network, right? The proper way to do that, as I explained to that other caller, is to set up a VPN solution and then maintain that one access directly into your network. If you find yourself at a point where you have, for whatever reason, and they do exist, where you have to start opening services up directly to the internet, C-File, for example, I don't know how you're going to do that unless you're going to carry a VPN solution with you everywhere, and everywhere you connect a ton of local traffic back to your home, which you could do, I guess, but unless you're going to do something like that, when you get to a point where you have to start opening stuff up to the internet, what I would suggest you do, if your ISP supports it, take the cable modem, run it into a switch. Then from your switch, run directly into the server, and then again from the switch, run into your router for the rest of your network. So that and so what that does is it puts your
the modem the modem becomes NAT and provides a DHCP address to both routers.
Well, no.
The
modem, if it's configured properly, should issue a public IP address. You don't want the modem doing the firewall and routing because, frankly, I don't necessarily trust the firmware on whatever no-name router your cable modem provides.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of cut you off there a little, because these aren't going to be hosted on my infrastructure. These are going to be up on a DO.
Okay.
And so as far as putting a server up on DO, one of the services that we're looking at hosting is Nextcloud, and then we're also looking at hosting possibly the OSEM that runs UseCon.
Sure.
Because this is actually a convention, open source convention that I volunteer with.
Very cool.
And right now they're using proprietary software that I'm not thrilled with. And they aren't thrilled with either. It's not really filling their needs. And they're excited to switch over, but I need to get it up and running so they can kind of play with it and test it and et cetera. So those are going to be going up on DO. And as far as beyond having firewalls on those, as well as something like fail to ban, locking down ports, and all that fun jazz. Aside
from that, once you get that mostly covers the security. Obviously, staying up to date with software and patches and stuff like that. Once you get past that, the next thing I would start to do is I would tell you to start worrying about backups, having things that offload from DO and not just using their backup service, but having that data on a totally separate device, either a totally separate VPS or I prefer it somewhere at my house on an actual physical hard drive. But I would tell you to start backing up the data that's on there. So if something catastrophic happens to DO, and I've seen it happen, we host a server for the Lamuntu guys, and we had a problem and we lost data. So I would suggest data backup after you've gotten through the security aspect.
Yeah, my plan with that had been to actually set it up on a nightly routine that automatically basically spins the server down, does a snapshot, runs all the updates, brings it up, and then have a separate server that can ping it, run a few checks to make sure it came up okay, and then let it go again.
Sure.
But
you shouldn't even need to necessarily power it off for a snapshot, but...
Well, yeah, but I actually want to take and do not only just a snapshot, I want to do weekly full disk images and have those saved off and all that. So. Well,
I think you're going about it the right way, my friend.
Okay, it's my first time hosting things in the cloud, and especially for somebody else, and it's making me a little nervous. So having somebody who does it for a living makes me feel a little better that they're not you're not saying, "Oh yeah, you dunce, you forgot this one thing."
Yeah, no, I'd say you're on the right path.
Okay, I just want to say thank you for all you do for the community. You're a real asset, and I don't think everyone quite realizes how much you do off air to support the things you do on air.
That means more to me than you'll ever truly know, my friend. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, I've been listening to the JB stuff as well as you, all the way back to the Matt Hartley days of laughs.
Very cool. Well, we appreciate your support, and I thank you for the call today. 855-450-NOAH, that's 855-450-6624. The email live@asknoahshow.com. So I get into SailfishOS, and this is by far the best UI I have ever used on a mobile operating system. I would describe it to you, if you've not used it before, as a cross between WebOS and iOS. The level of integration and the level of attention to detail is second to none. So one of the things that they've done that I noticed right off the bat that I really appreciate is they designed this operating system from the ground up for people who want administrative control over the device. Multiple times throughout the week, I would forget that I was on a phone because it feels like I have a desktop in my pocket. Why? Because I literally have a desktop in my pocket. That's what's so cool about SailfishOS. When you boot up, you look at the file directory, it's a home structure. I instantly notice that I have my downloads, my documents, my pictures, everything under /home/Nemo is the username that's created by default. And I was like, oh, I have a home directory. That's really cool. Well, here's what's interesting. Because it's actual Linux, you can solve problems using traditional Linux workflows. The first problem I came across on SailfishOS, I later found out there's a better solution, but the first problem I came across on SailfishOS was if you encrypt the SD card, which I did with Lux, because it's basically uncrackable, I had despite what I knew about a Lux password, we sent it into a data recovery firm, and they still weren't able to crack the password on Lux. So, and that way I was able to tell them how many characters it was, and I was able to tell them a little bit about the password, and they still weren't able to get into it. So I feel pretty confident in saying that Lux is fairly secure. If you encrypt an SD card with Lux, the indexer won't index it for the music system, because at the time that the phone starts up, it can't actually read the SD card. You have to go into the storage system and unlock the SD card. And so what I did was I created a symlink inside of the directory that SailfishOS is already watching back to my SD card, and that brought all my music in. And I later found out there's actually a command you can run to force it to to run the update the index service, which doesn't surprise me at all. I go to copy music onto the phone, and I'm like, I'm going to have to install some software. I'm going to have to take the SD card out. And all of a sudden, I'm Googling around, and somebody goes, I just use rsync. And I went, rsync? On my... Hey! rsync and SSH is built right into this thing because it's Linux! They give you administrative access right to the device. Devil SU, you go in there, you enable the device, and you can elevate to rep privileges. You have full access to the file system. All the apps that are running run inside of your face. And the UI, again, second to none. It's designed for people who want to own the phone, right? Every time you open an app, you have two options. Well, three really. The first option is to close the app. And to do that, you swipe down just like you would if it was a computer and there was a little X in the corner. And because it's gesture-based, it's a swipe. So you swipe down the far right corner and it kills the app. Your second option is to swipe to the left from anywhere on the screen, and that minimizes the app. So the app is still running, and if you go to your home screen, you see an outline of the app, and so you can see all of the apps that are running in the background. Now, every one of you who have Android or iOS, if I were to ask you right now how many apps are running, how long would it take you to figure it out? How long would it take you to go into whatever setting or whatever utility that you use to figure out how many apps are running? I push my power button, swipe my fingerprint, and the next thing I'm looking at is how many apps are running on my phone. So there is nothing that eats up memory that I'm not aware of. Because again, SailfishOS is designed to be a geek's phone. We like to know what things are running. And when something is running poorly, we like to be able to kill it. And the ability to do that is awesome. And yes, Nunix, PSAUX works inside of SailfishOS. It's absolutely fantastic. But I don't even need to use it because it's just right there on my screen. I also have large hands, and so it makes it very difficult for me to use, I don't have large hands, and so it makes it very difficult for me to use larger phones. It's one of the reasons I have always stuck with 5-inch or smaller phones, because even on my 5-inch phone, I can reach maybe about the lower half of the screen. To get up to the top half of the screen, I basically have to shuffle the phone in my hand, and it makes it very, very unusable in one hand. Well, guess what? SailfishOS solves that because you can grab anywhere on the screen and all of the menus exist, and this is going to be hard to explain via audio, but trust me when I tell you, the menus exist either above the phone or below the phone. So you have the viewable area. If you pull down, the entire UI of the phone slides down and reveals a menu. The options, there is a selector bar that's in the center, and depending on how far down you drag the screen or how far up you drag the screen, highlights one of those options either above or below the screen. If you let go, it selects that option, which means I can access the menu from anywhere on the screen with any hand. Brilliant design, just brilliant design. That pull menu from anywhere, absolutely fantastic. Now, I said that you can swipe from the right to the left to minimize applications. The other thing that does is takes you back to the home screen so that you can easily switch between two running applications. So guess what I do all the time? I switch from a terminal over to a web browser. I switch from a notes over from a web browser. On Android, on iOS, on basically any other mobile operating system, I have found multitasking to be abysmal. With SailfishOS, swipe, tap, swipe, tap, swipe, tap, swipe, tap. And again, because I can use these gestures from anywhere on the screen, I can do it with one hand. Then I went into the settings and I said, okay, well, what cloud-connected devices are here that I'm going to have to disable? None. None. No cloud-connected services are tied to this stupid thing. Now, they do offer a backup service if you want to sign up for it, but guess what the default backup service is? It creates a tar.gz of your home directory because all of your data and all of your apps and everything you use on the phone is in your home directory. So you manage it just like you would manage a Linux computer. And the backup is just a dated tar.gz. and you can rsync that thing off, or you can just leave it on the SD card and restore to a different phone. Exactly how you would expect a small little 7-inch laptop to work. Then I got to the app ecosystem. Now remember, when I bought this device, the only thing I wanted was to be able to write notes. I wanted an encrypted Lux device. I had really no intention of using this thing on the internet. Well, guess what? The official store is awesome, and the apps are awesome. But guess it gets even better. They support repos. If you don't like the default app store, you just add a repo, and now you have a whole nother swath of apps that are available. So I'm using the repo Stormon, which I added with a single command, and I have access to a bunch of third-party apps. Guess how I installed Stormon? They have to add the repository. Obviously, you can do it with a from the command line. They give you an RPM, and you just install the RPM. So they package things as RPM, and you can install those things on SailfishOS. My mind continued to be blown as I'm driving through this thing. I'm like, I can use RPMs on my phone? This is awesome. So then I open up the App Store, and I start looking through all of these apps. One of the things you notice is, first, every app that's open source, and not all of them are, but the vast majority of them are, have a link to the GitHub page, so you can get direct access to the source code, follow the development, all of those things. The other thing it does, last updated. The two things it gives you, the link to the source code and the time that it was last updated. So you can see those developers that kind of drove by, wrote an app, and then haven't touched it for 5 years. It's pretty obvious which ones are there, and it by default will sort them so only the newest ones rise to the top. Fantastic idea, right? Much better designed apps, way better designed apps. Every app on Android or iOS looks however the app designer wanted it to look. Well, guess what? With SailfishOS, it's designed for simplicity in mind while mobile. It adapts to a keyboard well, but it's designed to function on a touchscreen device because they have realized what everybody else should realize, which is convergence is a joke. So it forces a standard UI on all of the apps. You choose what they call an ambiance, and the ambiance is your background as well as a color, which you want to kind of hue all of the entire user interface. And so I chose a bluish purple for my ambiance color. So all of my apps have that kind of hue, and all the apps are just semi-translucent, just enough that you can kind of see the background. So every application, no matter if it's a third-party application or published by y'all themselves, all look exactly the same, and all the menus are in the same place because they're using this pull-down menu. Everything looks uniform. I cannot believe that this company that doesn't even sell phones in the US can design such a superior interface to Android and iOS, and I'll throw Lineage and every other mobile operating system I have ever used to include my beloved WebOS. Now, here's the one of the other great things. I kind of alluded to this earlier in the episode. When you become a SailfishOS user, you just inherit a bunch of friends. And by the way, to Nunix in the chat room, it's finished software. That's a joke because, yeah, right. Obviously, there are security updates and stuff like that. You inherit a list of friends because everybody that uses SailfishOS becomes extremely passionate about SailfishOS, right? It's why I can't stop talking. I could devote 5 episodes. I won't, but I could devote 5 episodes just to talking about SailfishOS and all of the amazing things I've been able to do with it and how happy I am and how much I wish this would take off in a very big way. So let's say I've sold you. Hey, I'm buying a SailfishOS. I'm on the boat wagon. This is great. Couple of things. Okay, first, if it was bug-free, it would have already taken off. So there are some bugs. There are some things you have to work around. But I would articulate that they are no more severe and no more inconvenient than a than a small Linux distro that's just starting up, right? Couple little things, couple little hairy edges here and there, but for the most part, it works. If you're primarily using it as an offline device, you'll have no problems at all. Once you start to try to integrate in with other mobile things like apps, and you want to sideload APKs, and you want to, maybe load the Google Play services. Once you start to do those kinds of things, that's where people start to run into trouble. And so I don't think that it is ready to replace Android or iOS in the traditional sense. But then again, I don't think any alternative operating system is truly ready to replace Android or iOS. You're always taking a compromise. However, is it fully ready? Prime time? Absolutely. No disclaimers. Is it ready to become a small little 7-inch computer that you can hold in your pocket and use it as a companion device to your phone or laptop? 100% it is. There are certain things that I have moved exclusively from my laptop over to SailfishOS. Anybody that has been around me for more than 15 minutes will tell you, oh, he takes his laptop everywhere. He's got this stupid little bag, and every time he goes out to eat or the grocery store or even the gas station, even the bathroom, he takes his laptop with him. Yes, I do, because I have to have access to my laptop. It is my life. I live on it. And what I've done this week, there are so many times I've left my laptop at home or in the car because I've got my 7-inch laptop. I've got my little device, right? And it's got a full terminal app. I've got a little keyboard, and I've got a little dock that I use that I'm able to set up and do all of my quote unquote desktop or laptop work on. Absolutely fantastic. So what are some of the apps that I think are the best? If you're going to follow my example, if you're going to go down this road, what app should you be looking at? Well, Foil Notes is an encrypted notes app. It ties in with the native Notes app, and so you just enter an additional password to decrypt your notes. Absolutely fantastic app. Obviously, the built-in Notes app, I use it all the time. It's very good. I like the tiled approach rather than the big long list. Task List. One of the best task lists I've ever seen. Add a task, delete a task, create a new list for a task, and here's one of the best features. I've not seen this on many other task lists. Reset all tasks. I have created checklists for things that we do. When we go to install a access point or we go to install a camera system, there are certain tools and certain materials that we need. And I've created checklists, or what we call pull lists, which used to be on paper. There were PDFs. And so what we used to do is we'd go down with the PDF and we go, yep, we have that. We have the screwdrivers, we got the drills, we've got the Cat 5 termination, we have all these things, right? I have created pull lists inside of the task list, and I can just mark them off, and now we go do the job, and when I'm done with the job, I pull down the menu and say reset, and it marks them all as undone, and then I can use it again. I can export or import those lists, so if I don't want all of them loaded onto the phone, I can store them off-site or in my home directory or rsync them up to my FreeNAS, whatever I want to do. It's absolutely awesome. Bible Me, I use for my nightly devotionals. The clock alarm function is what you would expect, clock and alarm function, but I use it daily. A Fishmonger, a fantastic shopping app, just very straightforward to the point. Like I said, I use the Storeman repo, Wi-Fi analyzer while I'm at work. The terminal app is fantastic. It's a full-on terminal app, supports all of the terminal functions that you would expect on a Linux computer. The file browser, full access to the file browser. One of the things that I don't understand how people on iOS get around without having actual access to their file system, that seems crazy to me. Tiny Edit, a simple text editor. The media player, fantastic. The voice recorder, fantastic. Muppet64, emulate GoldenEye. LLS video player, which is essentially their version of VLC. There's an IRC client, and Quick Edit, which is a Reddit app. So my pro tips are this. I have tried multiple times to move over to a mobile operating system, and it's failed because SSH didn't work, or my YubiKey didn't work, or Lux didn't work, or I plugged in a drive. I always hit a roadblock. SailfishOS is the first time I've ever loaded an operating system onto a phone and said, this could legitimately replace my laptop. Are there bugs? Yes. Should you be prepared for a problem-free experience? No. But is it worth it? 100%. You can move or sync your files with rsync. You have access to the actual device. If it didn't have any bugs, everybody would be using this. The vast majority of people are not interested in the kind of device that SailfishOS is. But if you want a privacy by default, privacy personal device, you have to check out SailfishOS. If nothing else, go take a look at their website and get a demo and kind of see how the UI works. It's absolutely fantastic. Mimix is in our interactive mumble room. I got about 2 minutes. You're a SailfishOS user, I understand.
Hi, Noah. Long distance call from Switzerland.
Hey,
so in fact, I'm using a Nexus 5. So you have two possibilities. First of all, you have the licensed versions that you have bought for the Sony Xperia versions. Mm-hmm. So the best thing is probably the XA2 versions, the whole series. But there are a lot of open source versions available. So the best ones for that would be the Nexus 5 and the OnePlus One probably.
Okay.
Fairphone 2 also. And in the future, probably the Fairphone 3, the PinePhone, and the Librem 5. And with all that, you can join a community and you can make this operating system really, really great. There's a lot of things to like. There are some things we have to get better, which obvious, we are a small community, but I think there's a lot of things that we can really, really do good, and you will love it.
I have. I have.
Yeah.
I don't have enough good things to say about it. It's one of those I should mention, by the way, there are two versions of SailfishOS. There's SailfishOS 3, which is the official version that is sold, and then there's SailfishOS X, which is I love the way they describe this even. Download the operating system and then install it on whatever you want. And so instead of being a supported, like you just buy a phone with it pre-installed, which Yalo does support, they made their own phones, Sailfish X is the download and you install it on your own device, and then they have a list of supported devices. And I understand you're actually the maintainer or one of the people that contribute to the Nexus 5 port, yeah?
I'm not a maintainer. I'm part just of the community.
Oh, I see.
If you want to join the community, go to talk.maemo.org. And there is a big forum with all the devices that are available for SailfishOS. And there you can have a lot of information, how to port your device and how to install the SailfishOS on available devices. And
awesome.
It's really a good resource to get started with SailfishOS.
Hey, I really appreciate you joining us and adding your voice to the conversation. I also appreciate you being part of this amazing community. Like I said, it's great to just inherit a bunch of friends, sailors, as we call them in the SailfishOS community. I really hope after listening to this episode that there's a couple of you out there that'll choose to join me on this path, because I just don't have enough things to say about SailfishOS. I just hope it starts to get a little bit more attention, and maybe we can fix some of these things, and someday I would really like to replace my Android phone with a SailfishOS phone. That's it for this week. We're back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central. Visit us, AskNoahShow.com.